And we're back again with nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication involves a paralanguage, expression of meaning through sounds beyond the words alone. We have vocal qualities such as pitch, rhythm, articulation, and tone. Sometimes we talk about this as accent, and sometimes these things signal quite strange, unexpected meanings. So if I talk in one kind of accent, you might have ideas that I'm not intelligent or something like that. I had a friend once from Chicago who had a colleague who was from Mississippi, had gone to an Ivy League program, had a law degree, as well as a CPA. She was a tax attorney, had spent years in French, spoke fluent French. But when she spoke English, she spoke with a very, very strong Mississippi accent. And he said, she's really, really smart, but she has this really sort of thick Southern accent, but she's really smart, and I just like, what is wrong with you? Don't you understand? Just because someone has a regional accent, that does not mean they are stupid. Um, and so it's something that oh shoot, here we go. I had some pictures of monkeys because we were talking about what kind of monkeys they were. The brown woolly monkeys is what she spends her time following brown woolly monkeys around, and then she also spends a lot of time following around spider monkeys. And so if you take that class, it's 255 this summer. You get your science credit and see a lot of really cute pictures of monkeys and get to ask her about the monkeys. But what I wanted to get over here to do was to look at speech. Oh, yes, accents, regional accents. Here we go, a minute 24 here.
Received pronunciation is the great communicator. As soon as you deviate from that and you go into London space.
There we go. I wanted to stop it there. And I actually stopped our video, but then the video started it again. So I hope that all works out. So if you say, do you know, can you recognize a British accent? And people say, oh, yeah, I know a British accent. Well, uh, how many British accents do you know? There's not just one British accent. Britain is one of those places where you open your mouth and start to talk, and people have you pegged. Not only what region are you from, which is what we're doing here, regional accents, but also how much your parents went to college or not. Whether your parents went to college, and probably how much your family makes. It's it's a rough place. In any case, here we go with the British accents. Received pronunciation is the first one.
Received pronunciation is the great communicator. As soon as you deviate from that and you go into London speech, for example, then you lose a little bit of the communication. Cockney is based on East Anglian, Suffolk, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire. This is often by actors confused with the West Country, where the R's come in, and then you get Dorset and Somerset, get into Cornwall. Devon's slightly different. It goes into the nose a bit more like that. Then you go up north to Yorkshire. It's nice if you get a word that's got one of the predominant sounds in it, like Yorkshire. Then you cross the Pennines into Lancashire, where it gets much more flexible and fluid in the mouth. Liverpool is there too, it's Scouse. It's a mixture of all kinds of sounds. One of those is Northern Irish with the raising inflections, but you don't get the raising inflections down in Dublin, where it has that poetic quality, which is sometimes thought of as being not different from Highland speech, which is also quite poetic and almost Scandinavian. And then you come down to Glasgow and into the lowlands of Scotland, where you get glottal stops and things like that. And then you come down the west coast and you're in Wales, North Wales, where it's breathy like that, and down into South Wales, where you get much heavier, and Welsh people who sometimes even sound a bit drunk.
Okay, that's fun. We're talking about accents here, and you can see how there's a lot of value judgments associated with the kind of accents people have. Silent language can also involve nonverbal cues that accompany speech, things like space, the cultural use of space, your comfort zone, how close is too close. Very often that's cultural, and you may find yourself feeling like people from Latin America or from the Middle East just don't understand space and can't keep at a normal distance. They're always moving in too close. And then you realize as you talk to people from Japan that you're doing the very same thing to them. You're moving closer to them, and they're moving away. They're like, why can't this person from the United States figure out, personal space, right? So they have more distance being appropriate in Japan, and much less distance being appropriate. You feel like Japanese people are too distant. You feel like Colombian people are too close. And that's just proxemics. The movements, also cultural use of body movements, different kinds of gestures. We saw that in the opening video. Touch, the cultural use of touch, kissing, hugging, handshakes, etc., which we don't do right now because it's COVID. But normally, you have different ideas about whether you should give someone hugs or not, that are entirely cultural. Time, cultural norms concerning lateness, how long is too long, lots of fun there. And these are all things that you learn. They're part of your cultural upbringing. It's what you know based on your culture, based on the languages you speak. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a single language. Sometimes we have, I'll just keep going here, multiple languages spoken by a single person. In any case, on to ethnolinguistics. Ethnolinguistics, we have color categories and the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is the idea that language and perception influence one another. The languages express cultural emphases and nuances. We already talked about bridges. Sapir and Whorf, Edward Sapir, Benjamin Whorf. Sapir was a linguist and Whorf was an insurance adjuster. And you say, what? Insurance? Why? Well, insurance is very, very important. Linguistic relativity is very important to Benjamin Whorf, because it's very important to insurance. Insurance companies, insurance adjusters are in one business. Insurance salesmen are there to sell you insurance. Insurance adjusters are there to tell you why your claim is being denied. And they deny the claim because you failed to live up to your end of the bargain, usually. So if you have a gas station, and this is the idea. Language and culture can influence one another. Words affect perceptions. Perceptions affect words. Different kinds of social and cultural groups use language in different ways. And the way we know this is because of insurance. So you have a gas station, and your gas station catches on fire and blows up. And you go to the insurance company and you say, look, you owe me $460,000 to rebuild my gas station because, I had insurance. And they say, sorry, you're going to reach into your pocket and pull out $460,000, or you're just going to walk away because that's, we're not paying a red cent. Why? Because you failed to live up to your end of the bargain. What blew it up was two of your own workers smoking cigarettes around the fuel pumps. And that's what blew it up. It was due diligence, right? You didn't do your due diligence and train them not to smoke around the pumps. If you had done that, then we would have paid your insurance. So this is obvious, why we have due diligence, but it's also why you have that little sign there. And the sign on the gas pump always says, or used to say, inflammable, right? In which case students say, no, it said flammable. And I say, what? It says inflammable. And this is a historical thing. It has to do with what we started out saying and then what we ended up saying. So just in case we're up in the corner again, inflammable. That's that in beginning, which means there's two different meanings. One is inside, right? If you inhale, that doesn't mean you didn't inhale, right? It means you did inhale. You inhaled it in, but it also can mean not, right? So if you think about something being incorrect, it's not inside at all. It's a negation, right? So in a negation. So sometimes that got confusing to people, and I think in Spanish, actually, inflammable means not flammable, whereas in English, inflammable means it inflames, right? So flammable is like paper, wood, cloth, right? Cloth is flammable, kerosene is flammable, diesel is flammable, motor oil is flammable. Eventually it will burn, right? You hold the fire to it, eventually it will burn. It is flammable. But inflammable is something quite different. Inflammable is scary because inflammable draws the flame to it. And that's gasoline. This is natural gas. These are other, gaseous substances that draw the flame to them. So if you have a can of kerosene over there and you strike a match over here, nothing's going to happen. Actually, if you throw the match into it, it'll just fizzle out in it because it doesn't really burn. But if you have a can of open bowl of gasoline over there and you strike a match over here, the flame will follow the vapors. The vapors are going to explode and the whole thing will blow up and start a big fire and burn you up. So, right? So that is inflammable. That is highly, highly scary. And that's why they put inflammable everywhere. And then people started saying, wait a minute, inflammable? That means it doesn't inflame. It doesn't mean it catch fire. And they're like, whoops. So now you see flammable everywhere. Because obviously the dictionary meaning was not communicating what the word actually meant in everyday life. And this is why insurance is involved. Words can affect perceptions, and perceptions can affect words, and real money can be lost. This is why linguistics is so important in the real world, because words mean things, and people understand. Really, what the word means is what people understand when they hear it or see it. And this is why we're descriptive linguists and not prescriptive, and we're not sitting over there, whoa, you see, it said inflammable. They're like, no. We had a directive about that. You have to write flammable because people don't understand what inflammable means anymore. Speech variety. Speech variety versus a language, a dialect, a register, or an accent. When we talk about speech varieties, we're talking about languages, we're talking about dialects, we're talking about registers. Register has to do with almost like a different set of words. So you have a box of polite words and a box of impolite words. And sometimes when we're around, usually age mates, usually the people who are the same age as us, and gender mates, the people who are the same gender as we are, we cuss a lot more. And then when we get around people who are from a different age, maybe young children or elderly people, then we don't let those F-bombs drop so regularly. And so, you've done it. You've been talking with your friends, and all of a sudden grandma walks in the door, and all of a sudden the language cleans up immediately. That's called a register. There's two options of words that you could choose, and you chose word one instead of word two. And then accent, we already talked about accent. That's just sort of a phonological difference, depending on what sort of other languages people are speaking around there. In any case, we like to talk about speech varieties in anthropology because speech, language, the old Yiddish proverb is a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. So basically what that says is that the distinction between a language and a dialect has more to do with politics than with actual how the word is said. So if you go to France and you say, oh, I speak French, actually what you're speaking is Parisian, the language around Paris, which is the capital. And if you go to southern France, you may find people speaking something called, especially older people or people who are not didn't spend a lot of time in school, you'll find them speaking something called Occitan or Provençal. Provençal is a language. It's related to French, but it's also related to Spanish. And it's different, and it has different rules, and they speak it around in southern Spain. And then if you go to southern France, if you go to eastern Spain, you find that they speak a language here. Oh, goodness, we're at 13 minutes. I will come back to this. I don't know, I'll just finish it up. They speak a language around here in what's called Catalonia, around Barcelona, and it's called Catalan. And so Catalan is a language different from Madrid. What do we call this? Castilian, right? Castilian Spanish, and there's other forms of Spanish, and the one here in Barcelona is called Catalan. It's not even Spanish, it's a different language, and when you compare Catalan and Provençal, they are very, very close. They're much more closely related to one another than either one is to what they speak in Madrid versus what they speak in Paris.